And like here we're standing in Cork Harbour in Ringaskiddy, and many times I've seen people collecting shellfish at low tide, like mussels and periwinkles, and I know you've been doing some work on shellfish as well, so maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, my current project is called Wild Atlantic Mussels, and we're looking at the feasibility of pushing mussel lines into deeper and more exposed water. So a lot of the aquaculture, the long line mussel aquaculture, that a lot of people are probably familiar. You see
Is
the
it
boys
mostly in the west of Ireland, Bantry? Or?
Mostly the west and west, southwest, northwest. A lot of the mussel culturing in the southeast is dredging for mussels, so it's a little bit different.
Yes.
But the long line, the rope culturing of mussels is usually confined to quite sheltered waters, maybe less than 20 meters deep.
So by doing your research, you're trying to push this out
Yeah,
offshore,
so it would open up more space to be given over to mussel aquaculture. But the gear has to survive. You know, that's if the gear doesn't survive, you don't really have a viable farm.
But then you create kind of navigational hazards for boats as well. Like.
So there are many constraints. So obviously you have to stay outside shipping lanes. Obviously there's fishing areas, and maybe there's social constraints as well that you would have to engage with the community, I think, to get buy-in from people. But the further away you go, I think the social constraint is less of a problem. But the gear still has to survive.
And there's other interactions. Like
so you got to work on your mooring systems and.
In terms of legislation, like, is it difficult to get a license to do like this type of aquaculture? For example, if you and me decide to open a mussel farm, what's required in the Irish context?
Well, you got to apply to.
Obviously, like the sea is owned by the state.
It's
not private. So, like, anybody can apply for a license to do aquaculture in any area.
You can apply for a license. You would have to obviously go through the existing regulatory framework, and there's not a lot of new licenses being given out at the moment, but like that's part of the reason to push maybe aquaculture further out from the shore into deeper, more exposed regions. It would open up more space for licensing, and hopefully it would be more profitable for some of the existing farmers. One aspect of the study is so we're working with a company that produces a satellite product. So they produce chlorophyll A maps of the sea, and we're going to be working with them, and we're going to be ground truthing their models. So we're going to take samples, actual real samples, and look at the chlorophyll A content and the type of phytoplankton which is there in the water. And this is the primary food of mussels. So hopefully by ground truthing their models, we can come up with a much more accurate way of modelling the chlorophyll biomass in the southwest of Ireland. So then when you have that type of information, you move into a space where you can look at carrying capacity of bays. So, you know, rather than just putting too many mussel lines in, you can get some idea how much food is actually available in an environment. And you can manage an area based on that knowledge, because if you overstock, some mussels will get lots of food, but other mussels that are sort of behind them, they're receiving the water after. The water will be stripped clean and they'll get nothing.
Are the mussels which are being farmed on the ropes, are they still feeding on food available in the nature, or farmers actually need to feed them similarly? Like if you have a farm of fish, salmon, you need to feed them, so you use other fish to feed this more expensive fish?
No, it's entirely natural. Like there's no.
So basically, farmed mussels, they're more close to nature than farmed fish. Huh?
And it's if
they don't get antibiotics or anything. Huh?
No, there's no antibiotics. So the only management is usually the collection of the larval mussels or the baby mussels takes place in a different location to where the mussels are grown out. So the farmers will put out collectors in certain spots, and then those collectors will be taken in, and the mussels will be stripped off the rope, and they'll be redistributed onto other ropes and then put in.
How do they make the mussels attached to the rope?
Well, the mussels attach to the rope using what's called a byssus thread. So they secrete these threads, and they secrete multiple types of adhesives. so they actually attach naturally.
So how do they put the mussels in some sort of tank and then put the rope there?
Yes, what they do is they strip the mussels off the collector.
Yes.
And then the rope, they redistribute the mussels around a rope, and there's a sock goes around the rope. So you've got the rope in the middle and the mussels distributed on the rope, and then this biodegradable sock. So
which doesn't let them flow away.
Yeah,
then?
so once the sock biodegrades, the mussels have attached to the rope.
Is it similar kind of plastic that they use for planting corn out in the fields?
I don't know about that actually, but I think there's a company in Ireland that makes those socks. But the technique was perfected in New Zealand, and it's been adopted over here.
Okay.
So instead of having like single ropes dropping down, it's one continuous rope that just loops around the top line. So
So you have some weights.
Yeah. So some of the ropes with this continuous sock are 200 meters long or 220 meters long.
Spoke about aquaculture, and you also mentioned like it would be good to expand it further. But from environmental point of view, do you think aquaculture is it environmentally friendly activity, or has it in some parts got bad detrimental impact on the coastal environments?
Yeah, I think
because some farmers might be using chemicals. I don't know,
well, in the past, particularly salmon aquaculture in some areas, they've used excessive chemicals managing their stock, pesticides and fungicides. But aquaculture is no different to agriculture, terrestrial agriculture. So mistakes were made in the past. Maybe mistakes continue to be made in some places. I know in Ireland we have a pretty decent regulatory framework, and most of the salmon is organic anyway, so they're relying on that certification to sell their product at a slightly higher price to stay competitive. So it's in their best interests to stay within the rules, so they farm organically, so there's no chemicals being used in Ireland. A lot of the treatments for lice and for instance another pathogen, amoebic gill disease, is a freshwater bath. So that's the main treatment when they run into these biological issues.
So,
but
what
there can be issues. It just depends.
But comparatively to other human activities, aquaculture is not the worst. In terms
no,
of
I don't
its
think
impact
so.
On the environment.
You have to look at how much aquaculture there is out there by comparison with terrestrial agriculture. Its footprint is tiny, and the practice of aquaculture is advancing a lot, and mussel aquaculture in particular has a very low impact. Obviously, there is a visual footprint, but the husbandry is around mussel aquaculture is more physical husbandry, and sometimes there's thinning of the lines, but the actual carbon footprint of mussel aquaculture is extremely low compared with other forms of farming and other forms of producing what is a very high quality protein. So I think that's, somewhere in there, there's, maybe part of the answer for lowering our carbon footprint, maybe replacing some beef consumption with mussel aquaculture would really drive down CO2 emissions.